Rain was falling in thin, cold sheets when Daniel Carter knelt beside the stranded car on the side of the empty highway. The night was quiet except for the hum of distant traffic and the metallic clink of tools in his worn toolbox. His hands were already black with grease, his jacket soaked through, and his old pickup truck blinked its tired hazard lights behind him. The woman whose car had broken down stood several feet away under a small umbrella, watching nervously as Daniel loosened the final lug nut on the flat tire. The road stretched dark and endless in both directions, lit only by the pale glow of headlights passing far away. And then, suddenly, a sleek black SUV pulled up behind Daniel's truck. Its headlights cut through the rain like blades, illuminating the lonely roadside scene. The engine purred quietly, expensive and powerful. The tinted windows hid whoever sat inside. For a moment, Daniel froze with the tire iron still in his hand, unsure if this was help or trouble. Moments like this could change a life forever. But before we continue, take a second right now. If you believe that small acts of kindness can change the world, make sure to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest good deed can echo farther than we imagine. Daniel exhaled slowly and returned his focus to the tire. Whoever was inside the SUV could wait. The woman in front of him needed help, and that mattered more than anything else. Daniel Carter had learned long ago that life rarely slowed down for people like him. At 38, he was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, in a small rented house on the edge of town. Every day felt like a balancing act between exhaustion and responsibility. He worked as a mechanic at a modest garage that barely stayed afloat. The pay was modest, the hours were long, and the bills never seemed to stop arriving. But every evening when he walked through the door and Lily ran into his arms with a bright smile, the weight of the world felt just a little lighter. That night, Daniel had been driving home after another 12-hour shift. His shoulders ached, his stomach growled with hunger, and his mind was already drifting toward the quiet comfort of home. Lily would probably be asleep on the couch again, her favorite cartoon playing softly on the television. Then he saw the stranded car. The silver sedan sat awkwardly on the shoulder of the highway with one tire completely flat. Most drivers passed without slowing down. It was late, raining, and no one wanted to risk stopping. But Daniel pulled over without hesitation. He remembered too well the feeling of being stuck and alone. The woman behind the wheel looked relieved when he approached. She seemed nervous but polite, explaining that she had been driving back to the city when the tire suddenly burst. Her phone battery had died, and she didn't know how to change a tire herself. Daniel simply nodded and got to work. Helping someone in trouble wasn't something he thought about. It was just who he was. The rain grew heavier as he worked, soaking his clothes and dripping down his forehead. The old tools in his hands had seen years of use, but they did their job faithfully. Within minutes, the damaged tire was off, and he began attaching the spare. Behind him, the black SUV remained parked silently. Its engine never turned off. Daniel tried not to think about it, but he could feel the presence of whoever was inside watching him. Finally, the SUV's door opened. A tall man stepped out, wearing a dark coat and polished shoes that seemed out of place on the muddy roadside. Even in the rain, his posture was sharp and alert, the kind of presence that immediately demanded attention. He didn't say anything at first. He simply watched Daniel finish tightening the bolts on the spare tire. Daniel stood up, wiping his hands with a rag as he checked his work. The woman thanked him repeatedly, relief visible on her face as she realized she could finally continue her journey. Daniel waved off her gratitude with a quiet smile. "It's nothing," he told her. Kindness didn't need payment. But as he turned to pack his tools, the man from the SUV finally spoke. His voice was calm, controlled, and curious. He asked Daniel why he had stopped. Daniel blinked, confused by the question. "Because she needed help," he replied simply. The man studied him for a moment as if weighing the sincerity of that answer. Rain ran down the man's coat, but he seemed completely unfazed by the weather. Then he glanced toward the woman's car and nodded once. It was only then that Daniel noticed the subtle detail that changed everything. The license plate on the silver sedan wasn't ordinary. It carried a small government insignia, and the man standing in front of him wasn't just a random passerby. He was security. Within seconds, the rear door of the black SUV opened. Another figure stepped out, a woman in her early 40s, dressed elegantly despite the rain. Her expression was calm but observant, the kind of quiet authority that made people instinctively stand straighter when she walked past. Daniel had seen her face before, not in person, but on television. She was Victoria Hale, one of the most powerful business leaders in the country, the CEO of a massive technology corporation that employed thousands of people. Her interviews appeared regularly on national news, and apparently, she had been the one stranded on the roadside. Victoria stepped closer, studying Daniel with a thoughtful expression. She thanked him sincerely, explaining that her security team had been delayed by traffic, leaving her momentarily alone when the tire burst. Daniel shrugged awkwardly. To him, she was simply someone who needed help. But Victoria seemed intrigued by his calm attitude. Most people would have reacted differently after realizing who she was. They would have asked for favors, money, or opportunities. Daniel asked for nothing. He simply closed his toolbox and prepared to leave. Victoria asked him one final question before he walked away. Why had he stopped when everyone else drove past? Daniel paused for a moment, thinking about Lily waiting at home. He explained quietly that he hoped someone would do the same for his daughter someday, if she ever found herself alone and in trouble. Victoria didn't respond immediately, but something in her expression softened. Daniel drove home that night thinking the encounter was nothing more than a strange story he might tell Lily someday. But 3 days later, everything changed. At the small garage where Daniel worked, a convoy of black vehicles suddenly pulled into the parking lot. The mechanics stopped what they were doing as several suited individuals stepped out, and behind them walked Victoria Hale. She had come looking for Daniel. The owner of the struggling garage nearly fainted when he realized who was standing inside his shop. Victoria explained calmly that she had been thinking about their brief encounter for days. In her world, kindness without expectation was rare. Too rare. She had spent years surrounded by people chasing money, status, and power, but the man who fixed her tire in the rain asked for nothing at all. That kind of character mattered. So she offered Daniel something unexpected. Her company owned a large automotive research division that focused on sustainable transportation. They needed experienced mechanics who truly understood vehicles from the ground up. Victoria offered Daniel a position, one that paid more than he had ever imagined earning. For a moment, Daniel thought it had to be a mistake, but it wasn't. And that opportunity changed everything for him and Lily. Months later, Daniel stood in a bright new workshop surrounded by advanced equipment he had only seen in magazines before. His hands were still covered in grease, but now his work helped design the future of transportation. And every evening, he still went home to the same little house where Lily waited at the door with a smile that made every struggle worthwhile. Sometimes the smallest decisions, stopping on a dark road, helping a stranger, offering kindness without expecting anything back, can quietly reshape a life. Before we finish this story, here's a special request for you. Comment below with the word kindness if you believe small good deeds still matter in this world. Because Daniel's story reminds us that even in the hardest moments, doing the right thing can open doors we never imagined existed. And if this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us how powerful simple kindness can truly be.